Henry, welcome to the show, man.
Man, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate this.
Yeah,
It's
I am really excited to have you on. And I feel like I'm on a run right now of people that I met at the Unstoppable Success Summit with Amberly, just because the room was filled with so many amazing individuals who are making an impact and making an impact for the right reason. And we talked a little bit about that before it recorded. And I'm sure we're going to get into it in the interview here. But I want you to take a second and introduce who is Henry today,
yeah.
and then we will break down how we got there.
Yeah, man. Thank you. First of all, congratulations on
Thank you.
getting married and all the good stuff that's happening, man. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And
It's still weird to say wife. Like I'm still adjusting to like saying the words, oh, my wife, right? It's still fresh.
I'm a year and like 4 months into it, and I'm adjusting still, So you might adjust quicker than me, Man, I'll say this, Justin, really quick. I had the opportunity to meet Justin at this Unstoppable Success Summit, and I'll just tell you, man, sitting backstage with you, and I want your audience to know how real and how genuine you were backstage. You supported everybody, but it wasn't like a fake support. It was like a genuine, hey, got up. Like, it was just cool to watch you when I was getting to know you, because I was like, oh, he like is legit. Like, he cares,
Thank you.
I just want your audience to know that, man, that I had a chance to witness you beyond the podcast, beyond everything else, as a human being that is doing good in the world, not just here for you, but genuinely for other people, man. I just want to commend you for that. And I think it's always good to put, like, just to let your audience know the character witness that I get to be for you, that
Thank
they get
you.
to hear that. Who am I, man? Right now, I love that you said, who are you right now? By the time this podcast comes out, I may be a different person, hopefully. What I mean? There's a quote I love that says, if we haven't spoken in over a year, allow me to reintroduce myself because my growth game is strong, and
Yep.
not that I'm like super different, but I actually, I'll tell you about me, and I'll tell you what happened to me 2 weeks ago. I'm extremely passionate about human behavior. I've been studying it for 26 years because I needed it. I was so caged in fear and insecurity, and my nickname used to be passive, and I just felt like I knew I was made for more, and I knew I wanted to do more, but felt like I was hitting walls, hitting walls, hitting walls. And freedom, I want freedom. Like, freedom is a big value to me. Truth and freedom are such big values to me. And so at 17, a book was put in front of me. I was like, dude, I could change. And I got obsessed, like nonstop, everything I could study, from peak performance, neuroscience, neurolinguistic programming, subconscious mind stuff. And for the last 23 years, I have not stopped, obsessing over it, because I realized I get to constantly grow, and the common denominator in everything I do is me. And so who am I? I am first hopefully a really a good person trying to do good in the world is my goal, just trying to live out my calling that the divine God, whatever you call it, is put me here to do, to be a light to people, and to be a good husband and a good father, and just to do my part in helping bring more freedom and love and peace and light into the world. And the evolution is interesting. And I love when you said, who are you right now? 2 weeks ago, I had this moment where I had these moments of surrender, where I'm just like, I'm going to put everything on the table, and I'm willing to let all of it go, none of it go, or any of, whatever. And I sat there, and, I put it on the table, and I had such a powerful stretching of my soul of like, no, this is the next level you need to be at. This is where you need to go. These are we talk about limitations, right? Like, these are the belief systems that are limiting you, that are holding you back. This is a story you're telling yourself. So I feel like I'm evolving as we speak right now. And I think that's the beauty of life,
It's so true. And all it takes is the realization of that moment, right? To understand that things are happening around us, and it's up to us to dictate what it means, right? Like, I love the saying, life is happening for me and not to me, right?
Yeah.
I posted a clip of my talk at the Unstoppable Success Summit, and on YouTube somebody commented, and I was talking about how, like, it was the very end of my talk where I essentially said, you are exactly where you chose to be. But some of you are hurt by me saying that, right? Because, oh man, you're not happy with where you are. But the reality is, the beauty in that quote is you get to choose where you go. Yes. And somebody commented and goes, we don't choose the hardships we go through, right? The understanding that she's clearly in a life is happening to me type of scenario, right? Versus it's happening for me. So I want to talk a little bit about that with you, right? Like, obviously we've all had hardships in our life, and you chose the path of, I'm going to learn from this, and then in turn, spread my light. What is it about you that made you get out of the victim mindset and get into the victor mindset?
The reality is, if we're going to go through it, might as well grow through it, right? Like if I'm going to go through this anyway, then I have a choice to make. I'm not going to just go on autopilot. I'm not going to let go of the controls of my life. And for so long of my life, I know I lived in so much fear, and still fear comes up all the time, right? But the question is, do I want to live empowered or disempowered? Right? The greatest gift I have is choice. The greatest gift you have is choice. Like, you have this power of choice. And if I'm going to give choice, this only thing that will literally have the power to shift my entire life, if I'm going to give that to externalities, then I'm a puppet. I'm not going to be a puppet to the world. I'm not going to be a puppet to other people's opinions. I choose. And if it ever comes up, that's okay. I honor it. But I go back to my agency. If I can go back to this moment right now and choose, then life my past does not have to equal my future unless I choose it to be. I've been through some really hard stuff. I was just talking to my mother-in-law about this. So my mother was diagnosed with cancer and a while back. And I remember my father had passed away a few years before that. And I knew the second the doctor told me, like, he pulled me into the room and he's like, hey, in his office, can I talk to you in my office? Right. And it was like those movies, you don't ever really expect it. He's like, so your mom has cancer. And he described how bad it was. And it was really bad. And I remembered at that moment, because my sister had spiraled when my father had passed, my sister just walked into the office and I pulled her aside and said, hey, we're going to go through this anyway. So we have to decide in advance how we're showing up. I said, because we can show up, but I said, it doesn't mean we override our emotions. I want you to feel everything you're feeling. I want you to allow yourself to express everything you're feeling. I said, and be with your emotions, not in your emotions. And Justin, one of the greatest decisions I've ever made using my choice. I was holding my mother's hand when she passed. And when she passed, I took something I call a sacred pause, where I pause before I react. And I paused and I told myself, Henry, you have a decision to make right now, because whatever meaning you give this is going to determine a lot of your life going forward. And I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, I will honor your life with how I live mine. And that decision has shifted my pathway on a trajectory where do I miss my mother? Am I sad? Do I pick up the phone? When I got my first TEDx, I picked up the phone to call her, but like I couldn't, and it doesn't mean I don't feel. It just means that I created an empowering meaning versus a disempowering meaning to what this is. Because what's my other option? What is my other option?
Yeah, no, and I'm so glad you shared that. And obviously part of my journey was when my mom lost her battle to opioids, right? Like, lost my best friend in a blink of an eye. And, when I look at that moment, there's oftentimes I look back and go, I've worried for a long time, and I've since kind of worked through it, but I would worry about sharing her story so openly and so publicly, right? But then I realized that my mom was such a big heart, right? And she knows that her story is saving lives and changing lives in such a positive way. But that was my choice, right? I have a choice right now. This could define me negatively or positively, right? And so, after I went through my little blip of not feeling my emotions and drinking my face off for 3 months straight, I finally had that awakening of like, it's time to use this for good. So very, very similar. And it's I just love the way you worded that, right? And to take that moment and to understand, like, this is happening for me. Now I want to go back a little bit. You didn't mention this, but I know this about you. You were in a boy band. Traveled the country, performed. There's a music video that I found a clip that you shared out on Twitter, which I loved, which is great. But what I love about what you did with this boy band is you were in the boy band when you got this book, right? And you started to learn, and in turn, you started to share these things from the stage. When I think boy band, I think hip thrusting, women falling on their faces, fainting. I don't think, hey, let me change your life. What was it about you learning these things that you're like, I need to share this?
You know, I'll tell you the hip thrusting moment and after I share this, but you know, when I think when you find freedom in yourself and you do they say it's hard work, but it's harder not to do the work, in my opinion, right? Like, yeah, I'll go through it right now. It's a little more painful, but for more freedom, like that's okay, right? And so I think when I tasted freedom and I tasted liberation and empowerment, I was like, dude, I get to feel better about myself. I get to build more confidence, like literally going from not even wanting to share how I felt to being able to like impact people. I was like, dude, I need to share this. And I remember being on stage once and I was like, we have a captive audience. What are we doing with this? What are we doing with it? And I remember one time I started just sharing and speaking and people were like cheering and crying and laughing. I was like, whoa, this is such an incredible vehicle. Pop culture is such an incredible vehicle because we come together to experience something that elevates us. It's music, it's a concert. So why not do that? So then when we were traveling, I would look up high schools and be like, hey, I'm in your town. Can I come speak? And one of the pivotal ones. So we traveled to Puerto Rico to perform with like a Disney all-star lineup. It was like Raven Simone and all those other people.
Oh yeah.
And then flew directly to Vegas to open up for Naughty by Nature. I don't know if you remember them, but Naughty
Yes,
by Nature, right?
that's amazing.
So two totally different crowds, right? And I remember the Disney crowd was really packed. It was like at the Coliseum in Puerto Rico. And I remember my group, they were all really good guys and they cared about doing good. And so we implemented some of that into our performances in between our funky dance moves, But afterwards, people came up to us and they're, not just moved mainly by what we did, but it was mainly by what they felt and what we said. And the comments were always like, we just want to keep, like, I needed that. And I think when you realize if I have a platform, how can I use it for good? And if it's like, when someone asks you, hey, Justin, what's your favorite restaurant? You're like, oh man, let me tell you, we're so big to share this restaurant that tastes good and gives you satisfaction for like 20 minutes. I'm like, I've been blessed with this information, obsessively studying it, that'll change your life forever, in my opinion. And so that was my obsession. And honestly, it kind of ramped me up into everything I do now,
Yeah. And it's so true. And it's in a weird way doing what we do, right? Having an audience, a captive audience that wants to hear what we have to say. It's almost like a drug in a way, right? Like it feels real good when somebody comes up to you and says, wow, that really, what you said really made an impact in my life. And honestly, if it weren't for that encouragement from somebody listening, this podcast wouldn't exist anymore. Like back in the day when we were doing 50 downloads an episode, somebody reached out to me from Japan on Facebook and said, because of your show, I decided not to take my life.
Wow.
And I decided in that moment, even if one person is listening, I'll show up, right? And you realize that you can make a difference. You can change a life. You can save a life. And so I love hearing that. So how much, obviously, performing in a boy band is a performance, right? So how much of what you learned in that boy band and that experience in the music industry do you bring into what you do now? Because I mean, I've seen you speak, it's captivating. Like people really pay attention. So how much do you still kind of take into your talks now?
When you go from a Disney crowd to a Naughty by Nature crowd in Vegas, you have to be aware of your audience and what they like, how to speak to them the way that works for them, and in a way to connect with them. So it really helped me connect with people. I have a lot of love for people, to be honest, just because I realized, even though, for example, that those two, since we're talking about it, they were so different, they were the same. They all had hardships. They all, like, when you talk about real stuff, the walls went down and all of them had their own struggles. All of them had their own fears. All of them had the walls they hit, own insecurities, own, am I ever going to be good enough? I keep, what do I need to do to gain more significance in my life or whatever that is? And you realize, man, we are all so much more alike than we are different. And if you look at everybody as if you can serve them and help them, you'd be right, because everybody has something that we can be. It doesn't mean that we need to be there with everybody, depending on what your calling is, but being on that many stages over and over and over again, with so many different crowds in different cultures, was really helpful. And I'll say this, things start out uncomfortable, then they become more comfortable, right? And so it wasn't as comfortable for me to do all that, but that's what allowed me to do what I do so confidently now, you know?
No, dude, I love that. Yeah. I just love the way you word things. Like this is why you're so good at what you do, right? Everything's uncomfortable until it becomes more comfortable. And it's so true with everything that we're doing. So obviously, as somebody who's constantly growing, constantly pushing themselves, what are you doing right now to get uncomfortable in your life?
First thing I'm doing literally is I call it loving self-awareness. I'm allowing myself to be completely honest with myself, but doing it from a space of compassion, grace, and understanding. That everything I'm doing out of my beliefs is optimal for my life and is going to keep me the most safe and connected to people, right? For example, and this is total honest vulnerability, like this is exactly where I'm at. And you would look at me and say, Henry, you're pretty bold, you're pretty direct, you speak confidently. I was sitting down in a parking lot, man, in December, and I had just I've been consulting this company. We did this opening ceremony for their big conference, and you know, the voice came to me, right? Whatever voice you want to call it, God, spirit, intuition, right? And said, you need to expand your island of fear so I could do more with you.
Oof.
And I was like, ooh, and my whole nervous system was like, ooh, when you know you're stepping out of what you're doing, you naturally are going to start like doing the twitch, right? Or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And what had come to me was, I need to be way more vocal, bold, and loving in what I do, especially socially on social media, and just be willing to go and be. So when I was really deeply becoming aware of, okay, let me understand, A, what do I really want? B, what is my resistance point and what fears show up when I'm doing it? I have to be honest about it, and not to beat myself up, because you can't beat yourself up into healing, right? And so I sat there and I was like, okay. And then I realized, and I did this, I do a lot of the subconscious nerdy work, the trauma work that we do. And I'm a very passionate person, as you could probably tell by this podcast at this point. I get really passionate. And, you know, I went back to an experience when I was a kid where I had said what I thought. It dysregulated my family. So I had formulated a belief when I was younger that said, don't be everything that you are, or else you'll dysregulate and ruin things with the people you love. And I care a lot more about love than I do about my, connection and people I care about than I do speaking up. So what do? As soon as I start to speak up, my nervous system or my subconscious mind's like, dude, be quiet. That's a little bit too much. So then I'd reach it and my whole nervous system be like, alarm, 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 So it's becoming hyper lovingly aware of where I'm at, where I want to go, what's my resistance, why is it there? And then I just start doing the work, man. Like, how can I give myself a new experience that can give my nervous system let it know that it's actually safe to do that, or a deeper understanding or deeper purpose why. And I start doing the deeper work on, Justin, I'll say this. I believe there are 3 things you absolutely need to grow. You need to be able to, 1, heal from your past. All those traumas, all those overwhelming emotional experiences that I experienced, the one I just told you about. 2, that's the past. The present is, how do I empower myself right now with my emotional mastery? So when emotion does come up, I'm not overtaken by it. I can understand it. I can love it. But Henry, the soul version, the being or leads it versus my emotion, my natural reactions. I'm more proactive than reactive. And 3rd, how do I reprogram my subconscious mind to the new belief system that I want and the identities that I want, So what is my process? That was a long way to just tell you, I become hyperly lovingly self-aware of where I'm at, where I want to go, what fears show up and why they're there. Then I go into the work of healing, empowering, and then reprogramming this being, because I want to be the programmer, not the program.
I love that. I love it. So people are going to hear this and go, I don't like taking off my layers. I don't like looking at myself in that way. And God forbid I love myself through it. Do you have any tips or tricks for people on how they can love themselves through really opening themselves up to that kind of Pain, lack of a better term.
Absolutely, dude. That's such a good question, man. You probably have a really awesome podcast because you have great questions.
I was thinking about starting one. I don't know.
Yeah, you should. I mean, I think you should. I think you do well. So first there's a guy named Dr. Stephen Porges, and he says there's no such thing as bad behaviors or bad responses, only adaptive ones. And so everything that you're doing right now, even if you don't like it, is an adaptation of something in your past. So understanding that you aren't bad, you aren't a terrible person, you are adapting to whatever that is. And sometimes, and I hope it's okay that I bring this up, but like when you're talking about like drinking or drugs, you said your mom had a big heart. Sometimes we feel so much that we don't want to feel, so we adapt.
Yeah.
We dissociate by different things in our life. Doesn't have to be substances. It could be dissociating by getting validation over and over and over again, by being the life of the party and not actually sitting with yourself to listen enough, right? Whatever that dissociation comes from, how do you detach yourself? And so if you're having a hard time, being compassionate with yourself, because I don't believe the truth sets you free alone. Love in the truth sets you free. Because if you don't create a safe place for truth to show up, you'll tell yourself enough truth to be uncomfortable, but not enough truth to be free. And so, and if you can't do it yourself, bring people around you that can and have the capacity to support you in this journey forward, understanding that. So recognizing that you're not bad. Everything that you're experiencing right now is because your body thinks it's what's best for you. And there is a difference between the reaction part of you and the proactive part of you, the spirit part of you, or the capital S self and the lowercase s self, as you'd say, right? And secondly, get a support group, right? Get a mentor, get a coach, go to therapists, do whatever that is. And don't lift more weights than you need to, right? Like if you want to go to the gym, you want to put just enough weights that is doing that. You want to have the right spotter that doesn't take away too much from you, or else you're not going to gain strength, but doesn't let it crash on you.
Yeah.
So stack those weights and just recognize this. And I'll say this last part of this particular, question is, in neurolinguistic programming, they say one of the prime directives of the subconscious mind is to store all your unresolved negative emotions, or emotions, I should say, right? Not negative emotions. And then it presents those emotions when they're ready for resolution. So if something comes up for you, it means you're ready to transcend it.
That's huge.
And so I'm like, let's freaking go. Because if I can transcend this, what does it really mean? What can I create on the other side of this freedom? You know what I mean? And so it's I'm uncomfortable in this phase of my life, being honest, because I'm in that like awkward, and I'm having to bring myself back to the present moment, back to center, surround myself with people. I'm getting disconfirming newer experiences, and I'm so pumped. My vision for where I'm going is so much more compelling than where I'm at right now, that it's exciting to me. It's like, ooh, I hate doing squats, but I know when I do, I can dunk or whatever. I don't know if you can dunk from squats, but that's just maybe it's a bad metaphor.
I can't. I don't care how many squats that I would do or how much weight I could squat. I couldn't dunk at all. My 5'8" self is not, and my 3-inch vertical. You know what I mean? But dude, I loved all of that, right? And to understand that these things are shown to you when you're ready to heal from them. I think that's such a powerful thing. And I love the proactive approach that you have to all of that, right? So you've talked a lot about vision, future Henry, like where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself going? What do you do? And what does your visualization practice look like? Is it a daily thing? Like, how do you map out where you want to go?
Yeah, the great question, man. So I'm gonna say that a lot to you, probably. It's just
that's fair.
Yeah, I believe it's the one thing to remember, in my opinion, and from my understanding, and even studies actually show, so it's science, emotionalized visualization is way more impactful than visualization. emotionalized repetition is more important than just repetition. The deeper the emotion, the deeper the reprogramming. Right. And so sometimes we'll sit there and we'll be like, oh, you look in the mirror, you're like, I'm great, I'm great, I'm awesome, I'm awesome. And your mind is like, dude, I don't know, man. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Whereas like, what if you can get into the emotion? Because what happens when you feel an emotion, your body says, oh, I have to pay attention to this because it's a bigger emotion. So for me, I understand, for example, this next level of being more open, more loving, more present, more bold. My practice, it feels probably a little more intense, but I just go to a time in my life where I've actually felt peace or felt confident, felt bold, or I see someone, or I get myself into that state, and I'll visualize what it's like, and I'll kind of use because your thoughts create emotions, and your emotions can, compound your thoughts, right? It's a cycle. So, so bringing myself to this moment and starting to create such a compatibilization, because think about this. How many times have you been so mad at somebody? So mad that your like thoughts are spinning, you're tense, you're like blood is rushing, you're totally mad, only to find out they didn't do it.
Yep.
Or it wasn't as bad.
Yeah.
But you had thoughts, your body reacted, you had all these things. It's because that emotion, the visualization you had triggered a nervous system response for you. So I want to leverage that, our body's ability to do that. I call it VIZing, V-I-Z. V stands for visualization. Visualize what you want exactly how you want it. See it, hear it, feel it, right? Then I is integrate emotion into it. Do the best you can to get the you want to feel in it. So if I know I'm going to do something today, I'm going to be on this podcast with you today, I might look at my day and say, what's the outcome that I want? Emotion will help me get that outcome. How do I want to show up? It's going to be different than when I'm on a date with my wife. Like when I'm on stage at the music festival with 35,000 people, very different energy than I am with my wife, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be like, everybody make some noise, And then, but when I'm with my wife, I'm not like, babe, how you feeling tonight? Like that's not what I'll do at dinner.
I challenge you to do that as the next date night. I challenge you to do that the whole night.
I'll film it. I'll put it on this, I'll film it and send it over. So it's like the beauty about our life is it's like the keyboard. What keys do I want to play that work with this song that I want to create, And so what I'll do is I'll look at this day and say, okay, well, how do I want to show up? And I will experience the day before I experience it. So I is integrate emotion, and Z, just to know, and zoom in when you're visualizing, look at it from your own eyes, and then zoom out as if you're seeing it on a movie screen. So the VIZ, visualize, integrate emotion, then zoom in and zoom out, is a routine I do, most days. I can't say every day. And then generally with my life's mission and purpose of what I see.
I love it. So I want to ask you a question that I ask everybody on the show. Since you just said I do this most days, but not every day, right? So it's a two-part question. The first part is, what is your definition of success? The second part is, what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Oof. What's my definition of success? My natural, like, I'm just going to tell you my heart response is being able to, at night when I'm praying, to say that I did everything I could to love. To love through my family, to love through the work that I do, to love myself, and to love the divine. I did everything I could. I didn't get it right 100%, but I got better. And I was aware, and I'll measure that, and what are three things I do? It kind of goes along with that, is at night, I measure myself, like really be honest, like, how was today? What can I do better today for tomorrow? Not as a bad thing, but just because I get the opportunity to be better tomorrow, so at night I have my routine where morning and night, I'll always read, I'll always pray, I'll always ponder. And then at night I pray with my wife, and I'll ask myself a series of questions. Everybody may have their own questions, but I think questions are so powerful. And if you could set a routine in the morning, what's my greatest outcome today? Who's someone that I could reach out to and give them love today, right? Or if you believe in God or the divine, what's my assignment today? Is there something I'm missing? And at night, looking back and checking in with the people that I care about the most, how did I love them today? You know, how how did I show up? What did I not like about today? What can I learn from it? So I go through a series of questions. And I think it's the morning and night routine of praying, reading, meditating, setting an intention, visualizing. Second, asking myself the questions. And then third, it's surrounding myself with people that are willing to tell me the truth.
Powerful. I love it, man. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? Where can they follow you? What's all the good stuff?
Thanks, man. You can follow me at Henry Ammar, HenryAmmar on Instagram, the Henry Ammar on TikTok. I don't really tweet, which is funny. You saw the video because I tweet once in a while. I probably need to get way better at it because I'm sure it's important.
I don't, by the way, I don't tweet either, but I Googled Henry Ammar boy band and it like came up like as a top Google search thing.
Oh wait, that's correct. I gotta look that up. That's wild. Yeah. So yeah, I have a podcast as well, Making It Happen with Henry Ammar. And I don't want to leave people with an open loop. So I'll just tell you the quick thrust story. Do you want to hear that really fast? Because
We totally didn't talk about the thrust.
Yeah,
we got to talk about it.
I don't want to leave an open loop for your audience. Like, dude, you know. So I can't. I don't think I do. I want to say his name, but he's a really, 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 really famous boxer. Let's just leave it there. You can just throw your assumptions in there. Who's a lot of money, and they wanted to sign our boy band, you know, and
wow.
We showed up to their very nice house and sang for them, and it was like wild because we were trying to do like walk the straight and narrow, doing the right thing, be an influence in the world, and there were girls that were like all over the place, and it was like a party, right? And I think they wanted us to be involved in this party, but we weren't trying to be a part of this party. And they wanted to sign us and pay us really well. But part of it was like, yeah, the vision we have for you guys, because you guys are all like, at the time I was really buff. We were all like really buff. Take your shirts off and you guys can do all this stuff. I mean, I'm telling you, these girls are going to go crazy. And we're like, you know, I don't know that we really want to be the guys that like take our shirts off and like thrust into the crowd. So not wanting to thrust so much costs us a lot of money, but I'm glad we didn't do it, you know? Anyways, probably not that exciting of a story.
No, that's hilarious. I mean, obviously, there's a couple people in my mind that it could be. I mean, it kind of gave it away when you said he's got a lot of money. Yeah. So we'll talk about it off air just to confirm if I have the right
you guys
person.
Can guess, and it was wild, man. It was a wild situation. A lot of stuff happened there, but you know, I'm so glad I surrounded myself with other guys that had my values, man. I think that's what's so important. That's why when I met you, Justin, I was like, dude, we connected. You know, I was like, I could tell you were a good person. I could tell you cared. And I was like, that's someone I'll probably, because you meet a lot of people at these events. I was like, I'll probably stay in touch with Justin a little bit more than other. You know, that event had a lot of people I would stay in touch with, but sometimes you're like, oh, maybe one or two or three, you know?
Yeah.
We were talking about Trent Shelton earlier, how both of us have stayed in touch with him because he's just real. He's awesome. Mm-hmm. He's a good dude, you know, and I love that. So.
Yeah. And it's so funny that you said there were a lot of people at that event that you'd stay in touch with. And it's true. And I've never seen that before at an event. Like you said, like you kind of see, you know, there's one or two or whatever, but every single person there was like, well, there's one or two that I wouldn't, but we'll talk about that some other time. But, you know, with that being said, there's some really good people there though. And I loved every single second of that weekend, which was phenomenal. But like I said, man, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Realizing that I can. Realizing that I had the choice to grow. The second a book was put in front of me and I was like, I asked the question, wait, I don't have to stay like this. The second I realized it, I was like, let's freaking go.
I love it, man. I love it. Henry, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your message with my audience. And more importantly, continuing to share your message throughout the world and changing lives, man. Your energy is needed. I'm so happy to call you a friend. And I'm excited to see where the friendship goes, dude. Thank you so much.
Same, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.